Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Well, it seems that, as I said, more racism to come because there seems to be a lot going on. Well, Wells Fargo is going to be doing some a little cutting back on mortgages and maybe giving it to minorities. But as we've seen before, Wells Fargo is no surprise to being racist towards people, as they have been racist towards black people before. Take a look at this video of that actual true fact.
That got filed. This is Wells Fargo. Ms. Jacobs has said in interviews, New York Times, saw the black community as fertile ground for subprime mortgages, as working class blacks were hungry to be part of the nation's homegrowing mania. Loan officer, she said in an affidavit, stated that employees referred to blacks as mud people and to subprime lending as ghetto loans. I can't tell you how hard it is for me to even say that. Y'all targeted black churches. I'm not going to defend that. That doesn't even deserve defense. I'm going to ask you one question. Does this organization reflect you?
So yes, they have been doing some very racist stuff, and I'm surprised how they're still in business after still doing very racist stuff. But it seems that they're going to continue going down this path, and it seems that white people are not really needed or wanted here. Now, guys, obviously this is a little extreme. So what you guys don't seem to really be realizing is what the damage has been going on into our country and whatever. This will probably fit people's more of their economy type stuff, but we all know that the economy is not doing well. The economy is kind of, obviously collapsing, and it hasn't hit us quite yet, and we understand why. It takes time for these things to take into effect. I think it's still taking time for the which will probably sooner or later at this point, where the closure of the lockdowns will be reaching us, and then the interest rates and all that. Well, to kind of understand on what's really going on here, or how bad in Wells Fargo's situation is in terms of the economy and why they're cutting back on all these things and being only specifically white people, you have to understand where they're coming from. So we'll kind of take a look at this and show you guys what their position is, what position they're in, and why we can still laugh at them.
On Wells Fargo in overtime, the bank, which used to be the #1 mortgage lender in the U.S., is stepping back from the housing market in a very big way. CNBC.com's Hugh Sohn just broke that story. He joins us more. Hugh, what can you tell us here?
Hey, Scott, good to be with you. So first of all, the thing you have to know about Wells Fargo is this was their pride and joy, the U.S. mortgage business. This was the generator of a lot of their profits over the years. And as recently as 2019, they were the biggest mortgage lender in the country. So what they're saying now today is, instead of going for everybody they could, and really up to a 40 or 50% market share, which was their previous aspiration under previous leadership, they're saying we're only going to sell mortgages if you're an existing customer or if you happen to reside in a minority neighborhood.
The market's so bad that Wells Fargo's getting out of it entirely. Hugh, is that how we should read this story, or is there more to it?
Well, that's not untrue, Kelly. So part of it is that the market has collapsed. Interest rates much higher still. In the third quarter, the Wells Fargo mortgage volume was down about 60%. Wow. I think for the 4Q, it's going to be even worse than that because the year-over-year comp is going to look scary. So that's the proximate sort of reason. Then you look at sort of the bigger picture. Their peers, Bank of America and JP Morgan, have already sort of fled the market because they consider it too risky. If you remember the financial crisis in which mortgages played a central sort of key risk and role,
sure.
The regulation got a lot harsher, and they would call it onerous. So as a result, they left, and Wells Fargo stuck around in the party because they were making a lot of money on this until basically, they started giving back that money in the form of fines, series of OCC, Fed, CFPB
one thing after
fines
the other
about their performance in servicing these mortgages and in collecting and executing on the payments and the foreclosures in which they had troubles.
So they're getting out of this business. Someday it will come back. It may take decades. I don't know at this point.
So yes, this is what I mean by pretty much white people are under attack, at least for this year, because it doesn't seem like it's going to be getting any better for you guys. Honestly, I apologize. The white people of today have nothing to do with the racism and the atrocities that happened almost 100 years ago, which they had no part in. I hate this reparation BS. I hate this to where white people are the cause of everything, and that's just not the case. I hate the divisiveness that this country has been causing, and I want it to stop. And the only way to really stop is to change the culture at hand. And if we need to change the culture, then so be it. But we need to stop using the word white privilege and start addressing people by their actual personalities, and maybe not by the color of their skin or what have you. And a lot of companies are doing this. They're really trying to attack white people. They're really trying to belittle white people. They're not really in favor of them, and and I say it's going to be reverse racism, and that doesn't really count because reverse racism isn't really real. But in this terms, it's kind of what it feels like, right? Where black people used to be heavily discriminated against and not liked, to where white people are being heavily discriminated against and they're not liked. So this is the problem, and we need to fix it. And we'll go into the more actual business side thing here, where it says Wells Fargo is cutting back on mortgages, will focus on lending to minorities. Wells Fargo, once the number one player in mortgage lending, announces is taking a step back from its previous goal of reaching more Americans. Instead, it will focus on home loans for existing bank and wealth management customers and borrowers in minority communities. The financial services company highlighted its plans to leave the correspondent business with plans to reduce the size of its servicing portfolio. The bank will focus its home lending business on individuals and families in minority communities. We are making the decision to reduce risk in the mortgage business by reducing the size and narrowing its costs. Cleb Santos, CEO of Consumer Lending, said in a press release. Specifically, the bank said it was going to expand your retail team by focusing on existing bank customers and underserved communities, invest in $100 million to advance racial equity and home ownership, deploying additional home mortgage counselors to local minority communities. We will continue to expand our programs to reach more customers in underserved communities by leveraging our strong partnerships with the National Urban League, United US, and other nonprofit organizations, said Christy Furcho, head of home lending and added head of the diversified segment, representation and inclusion at Wells Fargo. We will also hire additional mortgage counselors in communities of color. The press release highlights that $150 million will be used to refinance or buy homes in minority communities, helping more black people and Hispanic families achieve home ownership. These changes have been implemented as the lending market has collapsed as the Federal Reserve continues to raise rates to combat inflation, calling into question the long-term profitability of consumer loans. Wells Fargo also came under scrutiny for its fake account scandal in 2016 when it opened at least 3 million fraudulent accounts for unwitting customers. We're actively aware of Wells Fargo's history from 2016 and probably all your other history of maybe the 1800s to whatever your company was existed to now, where we need to restore public trust. Consumer lending chief Pablo Santos and CNBC, as part of that review, we determined that our home lending business was too large, both in terms of its overall size and its scope. When the post content for clarification on where the introduction in the mortgage lending space would occur and who exactly would be negatively affected, Wells Fargo declined for comment any further, which would mean only white people. So, when you have a black friend and they're with Wells Fargo and you're with Wells Fargo and you happen to be white and you can see him getting a house and you not getting a house, and then you try to ask why, and then they say, oh, it's because we're working with minority groups, which happens to be black people. You end up starting to connect the dots, and you get to see the actual racism at play. And then you can start suing Wells Fargo for racism because they're not supposed to do that because that's against the 14th Amendment. But this is just the reality of things, guys, where these companies or banks are actively targeting white people and not caring at all for your well-being. And they're only trying to cater to the woke market, and that's just so be it. And this is the reason why that banks need to just be apolitical. If you're going to cut back on, mortgages or whatever, sure, understandable. If you can't afford it because of what the government is doing, then yeah, that's understandable that you have to cut back, but cut back for everybody, not one specific group of people. Because now we're being shown as being a racist. Now you're being shown that you should not be trusted, and you're not going to win the public trust of your customer base, because how are you? You're being discriminated against one group of people. So, yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. This is where we're at in this country, to where we can hate on white people, but black people, by, you know, just existing and getting privilege all they want. Yeah, I think there's black privilege now, and that's being shown more and more throughout this year, and I think we have to be able to fight back against it. Start suing these companies for discrimination of race, and start changing the culture, because that's one way we can change it to where it won't be toxic. Alright guys, that's it for the video. Like, subscribe, share, and as always, take care.